All right, we're on page 100 of Mesilas Yesharim. All right. Today's class, I always want to dedicate in honor of a speedy recovery for Eliyahu ben Vichna, Elliot Katzman, family member of ours. Hope he has a refuah shlema, and this class should serve in the merit of his speedy recovery.
Amen.
Okay. All right, so we're learning the Path of the Just, Mesilas Yesharim, and we're discussing how to be the best Jews that we can be and how to serve Hashem in the most complete way. And we're climbing the ladder of various attributes. Mesilas Yesharim is going through the steps in the ladder of how to become a perfect servant of Hashem. And we are still on the first step, which is zehirus, of being watchful, being careful that we don't violate any of the prohibitions in the Torah. And we already discussed how to acquire that attribute, and now we're discussing there are three things which take away from one's ability to acquire the attribute of zehirus, or watchfulness. Meaning there are three things that detract one's ability from being careful and following the Torah completely. Now, the first... we're in the middle of discussing the first thing that takes away from zehirus, and that first thing is that a person is so busy with his work and with other things in life that he doesn't have time to sit and contemplate what he should be doing in life and what's important in life, and he doesn't have any time to dedicate to avodas Hashem, to serving Hashem. And we mentioned earlier, in an earlier chapter, this is what Paro did when he took away the straw from the Jewish people in Egypt, that they even had to make bricks and find their own straw. And it took so long for them to work that they didn't have any time to sit and think of how to rebel against Paro. And that's what the Yetzer Hara does. The evil inclination tries to get us to be so busy with work and other things that we don't have any time to sit and think about why we're here on earth and what our mission is and what spiritual goals we're supposed to accomplish. So in that discussion, we started talking about that when a person has free time, and even not free time, one of the most important things that he can do to get him to this level of zehirus is to study Torah. Right? We said that it's not only when you have free time you're supposed to study Torah, but rather we have to all set aside a set time every day to study Torah. And that's one of the first questions they ask you after 120 years when a person goes to heaven. They say, did you set times to learn Torah? Because if you don't set a time, then you're going to be just like if you want to work out, you have to set a time to work out, because if you don't do it, you're going to get so busy and you're not going to end up doing it. So it's important to say, whatever it is, you wake up 15 minutes early to learn 15 minutes of some Torah, whether it's Chumash, whether it's the Chavetz Chaim's 5 minutes a day. That was really good. You have that thing, the lesson a day, the Chavetz Chaim. It's the thing you can read about in English about the laws of Lashon Hara, about how to speak nicely about people, and it really takes about 5 or 10 minutes to read the English chapter, and they have it very nicely organized. That's a great thing, just to do that every day, so you always have a set thing of learning Torah. So in the middle of discussing learning Torah on page 100, im ho'osik b'Torah birosa d'racheha, if a person is involved in Torah study, when he sees the wisdom of its ways, tzivuya ve'azharoseh, its mitzvahs and its negative prohibitions, hine sof sof me'elav yischadish bo hisorus sheviehu el haderech hatov. It's going to happen automatically that when a person studies Torah and sees its wisdom, he will automatically have an inspiration to go in the correct way. Right? When we study Torah, it's a supernatural thing, and when we're totally involved with Torah, we are inspired to serve Hashem and to become better Jews. Now, and there's nothing that's a non-logical component of it. Just it's a spiritual thing. When you do study Torah, Torah is the mind of Hashem, the will of Hashem, and when we study it, our soul gets connected to Hashem, and that Memela happens automatically that we want to serve Hashem, and we have that inspiration to become closer to God when we study Torah. Now, also he says that we'll be inspired by the ways of Torah. Rabbi Feldman always mentions that when you study a sugya in Shas, when you study a Talmudic passage, you have all these rabbis arguing, and then you see at the end, their goal is to find the truth of Torah, find out what Hashem really wants from us. And they'll be arguing the entire time, these rabbis, and at the end, one rabbi will say, oh, I see you're right. And you were right. Not only that, one rabbi might bring another proof to another rabbi that he's been arguing with for several pages. Because usually when people fight, one wants to be victorious over the other. But when people are fighting, rabbis are fighting, it's not they're actually fighting, but they are passionately trying to discover the truth of the Torah. So if one person has a position and he realizes that's not really what the Torah means to say, he's going to admit it, because the goal is to try to get to the truth of the Torah. That's why the Gemara says that two rabbis, when they're arguing, two people studying Torah, they are enemies when they're studying Torah, but after they become lovers. Meaning they're in love with each other, because their whole fighting during the Torah study was in an effort to get to the truth of Torah, not to beat each other up. I forgot who it was. Someone told me there was two very big rabbis arguing about a sugya, and they were screaming at each other because each one passionately, had his view of who was right. And there was a housekeeper there who wasn't used to people fighting in Torah. They thought any time people fight, they want to kill each other. So she ran into the other room to one of the rabbi's wives, said, "The rabbi's going to kill that guy! Quick, stop him! Stop him!" And she was very bothered by that. Okay, so in addition to when we learn Torah, when you see that the whole business of the sages is just to get to the Amita Shel Torah, the truth of Torah, that also inspires a person to want to get closer to Hashem. So one thing, there is a logical component of seeing how honest the sages were, and two is a spiritual component that when we're involved in Torah, that more than anything else will bring us to want to serve Hashem. And that's what it says. Halavai osi azvu v'sarasi shemaru. It even says that halavai, meaning it would be fine if not fine, but it would be, how's he translated here? Right. Okay. What he said, it would be that they left me behind as long as they don't forget my Torah. Meaning, even if people forget Hashem says, as long as you don't forget my Torah. So there was a story in Baltimore many years ago, that there was a rabbi. There weren't many Orthodox congregations in America back in the 1950s, and there was a rabbi who went to my yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael, and he went to a congregation where they didn't follow the Jewish law properly. And somebody went and reported to Rabbi Ruderman in the yeshiva. He was very upset. How could this guy do that? How could he go to this synagogue where they don't keep Jewish law? And Rabbi Ruderman asked him, "Does this person still study Torah daily?" And he says, "Yeah, as far as I know, he does." He says, "Don't worry, he'll come back." And eventually he did come back. Meaning the light of Torah eventually inspired him to come back to the right path. Vichna bechlal included this gam kein kviyas ha'itim al cheshbon ha'maisa v'tikuno k'moshe kasavti l'mal. Now, in addition to setting up times to learn Torah, one thing that we have to do is to analyze our deeds. Right? We mentioned earlier that it's how important it is to every day set aside a time where we analyze our deeds for the day. Meaning, I think about my actions, and were my actions living up to the values of someone who is meant to serve Hashem. And not only that, someone who has free time, he will, if someone's wise, what he's going to do is not let any of those moments go to waste. He should grab it right away. And he should not let it go, and use all of his free time that he can to serve Hashem. Right? This doesn't mean, obviously, we need time to relax and rest. But you realize that even resting and even chilling out, quote unquote, could be used to serve Hashem. Because if you think that, I need a break now and I need to go, for a nice walk, and I think that I'm relaxing now so that I can be rested and have a better mindset to be able to serve Hashem. If you have that in mind, that even the time that you're chilling out or playing basketball is really a mitzvah to serve Hashem, because your intent is to serve Hashem better, to relax, so you can have more strength to be a better Oved Hashem. And this thing that we're saying that it could be that detracts us from watchfulness, of being so busy that we can't think. Even though it's very general, it's the easiest one to run away from it if you want to. Meaning, if someone's busy and he doesn't have time, it takes an effort, but a person should say, I'm setting aside a certain time to study Torah, and I'm setting aside to have a certain part of my day focused on serving Hashem and analyzing my deeds. Because if we're totally here in this world to get close to Hashem, as we mentioned earlier, then we should for sure set aside time to learn Torah and to serve Hashem properly and to analyze our deeds. And just another thing about Torah, what's unique about Torah is that, for example, in the Kollel, we're learning the laws of interest about ribbis. And it's right. You'd think it's a very mundane topic, right? If you lend somebody $100, are you allowed to demand $120 back for a loan? And all these intricate details. If you buy something, can you say, well, you can pay me later, but you have to pay me more. Are you allowed to do that? So there's a lot of intricate questions, and you'd think it's very mundane. Or you have in Bava Kama, an ox gores a cow, and how much do you have to pay? So even these mundane topics, which have nothing to do seemingly about God, even that, when we study that kind of Torah, inspires our soul. It connects to our soul to inspire us to get closer to Hashem. So the beauty of Torah is that even these mundane topics could help us in our spiritual growth, and they're essential to our spiritual growth. I was just thinking, we were just learning in the Kollel on Wednesday nights. We have a halacha class at 7 p.m. for those that want to come. We were studying the laws of going to the bathroom before davening, and you think about it, that even studying laws about going to the bathroom can sanctify a person, right? Where else do you have that you can learn such a really kind of gross thing, and it is causing a person to be sanctified and getting closer to God? You can even learn about the bathroom in the proper context, and it helps a person get closer to Hashem. All right, let's start, or I was not going to finish it, but let's start the second thing that distracts from watchfulness. We learned the first thing, again, that's being very busy, that a person doesn't set aside time to serve Hashem. Achasheni, page 102. Hinehu kashim od. The second thing which distracts us from watchfulness is very difficult. It's very hard. Hu aschok v'halatzon. It's levity and cynicism. Joking around. Now, it doesn't mean joking around that you shouldn't be happy and tell jokes. It's talking about a person who his whole life is a big joke. He doesn't take anything seriously. Kimisha toveabam, someone who's engulfed in these, or drowning in these attributes, that he doesn't take life seriously and he's a cynic. Hu kimisha tovea b'yam hagadol, shekashem ma'od, lihimolit mimenu. It's very difficult to come out of it. Now, by the way, look at footnote 17. He's coming from Ramat Yosef Solomon, who that's how he describes schok. I just saw that was his explanation of schok, is not taking anything in life seriously. Kihine yaschoku, levity, me'abides leva adam. It causes a person's heart to be lost. Shekfar eina tam v'adeh moshelesbo. He won't have knowledge being able to rule over him. V'harihu keshikor o shota asher iev shalote lehem arma o lahan higam. Ki eina mekablim hanhagav. Humasha amr shlomo malach al vashalom lishok amarti maholo l'simcha mazu ose. That levity is madness, and happiness, what is a person going to do with it? That levity and making fun of things causes a person to get to erva, causes a person to commit sins of sexual licentiousness. Right, so again, we're talking about a person here who he's just always joking around and he doesn't take anything seriously. We're not talking about a happy person. There is a mitzvah to serve Hashem in happiness. I once heard that Rav Chaim Ozer, one of the greatest rabbis before World War II, someone asked what he was like, and he said he was always telling jokes. I mean, he wasn't telling, he was telling jokes with a point to make people happy. Right? There's a mitzvah to make people happy, but obviously Rav Chaim Ozer took life very seriously. Here we're talking about a person that is just a total jokester and has nothing serious. He doesn't think about life seriously at all. Now, why does it say that levity brings a person to sexual licentiousness? That seems like a very big jump, right? Just because you're joking around means you're going to, commit adultery or incest or some other horrible sin. So it says, "Ki afal pi shechamurahi ha'erva etzel kol ben das." Even though the sin of sexual licentiousness is very serious to people, right? If you ask somebody, is the sin of adultery and incest, is that a serious sin? People will tell you, yeah, that's a very serious sin. People, they know about how the Torah speaks about the punishments involved and how serious it is. Says that levity causes a person that little by little, the natural fear, the fear that he has of these sins, they get chipped away little by having this attitude of levity. And little by little, as the fear of this sin goes away, he eventually ends up committing the sin itself. V'kol kach lama. Why does it go so far? Lefisha kamosha kol mitzius hazahirus talei besimas halev al davar ken kol atzma shel haschok ena ela meser halev min hamachshavos hayisharos v'hayunim v'nimtza shelo yavo hirhure hayir belibo klal. He says, how do we get zahirus? How do we become watchful and careful in the ways of Hashem to serve Hashem properly? It's by contemplating about things. We contemplate about the seriousness of our service of Hashem. We contemplate about the seriousness of the commandments that Hashem asks us to do. And that's how we get to zahirus. So what Kalus Rosh, what Tzchok and Kalus Rosh, what Levity does, is it causes a person not to have any serious thoughts of serving Hashem. Everything is just a joke. And what happens is little by little, it takes away from a person's heart the straight, logical thoughts of him knowing how serious these sins are, because he doesn't take anything seriously. And the fear of Hashem, little by little, goes away from his heart, it leaves his heart and his mind, until eventually, God forbid, he commits this sin. So just to summarize, we finished talking about the first detractor of Zehirus, which is being so busy that a person doesn't take time to think about serving Hashem. And we talked about the importance of Torah learning and how Torah learning is the most powerful thing to bring a person to naturally want to get close to Hashem, and naturally he'll have an awakening in his soul to get close to God. And then we talked about the first part of the second detractor from Zehirus, which is Levity, not taking anything in life seriously. And we said that that's not a genuine happiness. That's really talking about just someone who makes jokes and doesn't take his avodas Hashem seriously. And next week, God willing, we'll talk about the second part of this second aspect, which is cynicism, a cynic, someone who always makes fun and mocks serious things. Any questions? The end.